Hello, everyone. We're here for time period 8, the very brief overview videos that I'm trying to do at the beginning of the year for APUS history. So let's get right to it. Okay, 1945 to 1980. There are several different ways that this could be taught. Some teachers like to focus just on decade by decade. So the 1950s generally is viewed as a more conservative time period in American history. You'll see the growth of suburbs as the soldiers return home from World War II. You're going to see the baby boom take place. Um, and the president would be Dwight D. Eisenhower for the bulk of the 1950s. Then you transition into the 1960s, and it's generally viewed as a more liberal decade. So you'll see your hippies and the protests of the Vietnam War taking place, ending in 1969 with the Woodstock Musical Festival. And then you move into the 1970s, and this is a time period of economic despair. You'll see the Watergate scandal lead to Nixon's resignation. But again, the 70s, you'll have the gas lines, the gas crisis, and a lot of economic upheaval during the 70s and political upheaval as well. So that's one approach that we could take. But then you could also do it more thematically. So we could focus on the civil rights movement. Some people think the symbolic beginning is 1947 with Jackie Robinson being the first African American to play Major League Baseball. Some people say 1954 with the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision that ended school segregation. But regardless, we'll clearly go through the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, and then of course make connections to today. Then you could also talk about the second wave of feminism. So during the progressive era, we go way back to 1920, when women got the right to vote. That's often considered the first wave of feminism. But now the second wave is more about women being able to achieve the same status in society in terms of the workplace. So this organization called NOW, National Organization for Women, will form, looking for equal pay as well. So the second wave of feminism is another way we could view this. And then we could look at foreign affairs. Primarily the entire time period, 1945 to 1980, is the Cold War, the ideological struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union that started as soon as World War II was over. And again, lasts until, you could argue, 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall, or 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union. The two major Cold War conflicts will be the Korean War and the Vietnam War. But as you'll learn, there are many other confrontations that take place throughout this time period. So those are the different ways you could approach it. You could do it again by a decade approach, or you could really look at it more thematically. I'll just give you one last major trend in the country. You will see a large shift in the population during this time period as people move to a region called the Sun Belt. So it stretches from the Carolinas and Florida all the way really to the southern part of California. And that region was attractive first, I would say, first for weather, climate conditions, people looking for warmer weather. But then many of these states, not all of them, have very low tax rates as well. Some of them do not even have a state income tax. So you'll see a major shift. And as I teach you about the Electoral College, which you're probably going to do, this week. We're getting closer to the election. You'll see how the Electoral College numbers reflect this demographic change. All right, and there are your presidents, everyone. Truman, Eisenhower, and then Kennedy in 1960. Johnson takes over after Kennedy's assassinated, and then reelected in 1964. And then Nixon is 68, Gerald Ford, never elected president, and then Jimmy Carter in 76. I think I mentioned to some of you, Gerald Ford took over when Spiro Agnew resigned as vice president for Nixon, and then took over when Nixon resigned. But I'm getting way too detailed now for a brief overview video. So there you have it, 50s, everyone. A little more conservative time period, 60s, the more liberal era, 70s, economic upheaval. Major themes would be the civil rights movement, the second wave of feminism, and the Cold War. And remember, you guys did a little brief cultural project with this as well, so you have a sense of the television, movies, and sports and fashion and music of the decade. So, all right, great job, everyone, and I have one more to go, and I will see you in class. Take care.